I'm Crispian Olver. I am the Deputy Chair of the Presidential Climate Commission in this country. We were appointed 5 years ago by the President, and the Commission consists of a broad cross-section of stakeholders. So we've got government ministers, we've got business leaders, we've got trade unionists, we've got civil society activists and local authorities and young people and civic organizations. So it's a very broad church. And what we do is we look at what the science says, unlike some countries in the world. We talk to stakeholders about what their views and interpretations are of the science. And then we give advice. We give it to government, the President himself, the Cabinet. We also make it publicly available, so we give it to the whole of South Africa. And sometimes our advice gets a great reception. So we made recommendations about the emissions trajectory in this country. We made recommendations on the just transition framework. Sometimes our advice is less well received. So we went head to head with the former energy minister on the nature and pace of the energy transition. We think it's a mistake to hold on to coal as if it's like a last stand. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we embrace transition. And that's really the theme of what I want to talk to you this morning about, is transition. We're in the middle of a fundamental economic transformation. It's of the order of the great revolutions that have taken place in our development as humankind. Starting with the Neolithic agricultural revolution over 10,000 years ago. What's happening now is that we're going through a set of successive and faster revolutions. So, the coming of coal and steam, the arrival of electricity and the use of fossil fuels and the internal combustion engine. Trade, this mushrooming of trade as a dominant economic force around the world. The information age. Now we're dealing with the AI revolution, and we're dealing thick and fast on the back of this AI and digital revolution, an ecological transformation. And that's being driven by some hard facts around the way, all of these revolutions that have happened have been putting greenhouse gases up into the atmosphere and have been driving sometimes irreversible changes in the climate. And the changes are so slow that, short-term politicians can ignore them and think that we're going to somehow magically escape the consequences of our development trajectory. Last year was the warmest year on record since we started observations. In fact, if you drill into ice cores, it's the warmest year on record over centuries and centuries. So we crossed the path of the limit of 1.5 degrees. In fact, last year was 1.55 degrees. And it may sound like a small number, but the problem with global warming is that it happens at different rates in different parts of the world. So we in Southern Africa, the interior of Southern Africa, we're warming at about twice that rate. You're also seeing dramatic changes in warming in the cryosphere, the North Pole and the South Pole. And the bulk of this energy is in fact going into our oceans. So most of the heat that you're seeing is being absorbed by oceans, and the carbon dioxide is also acidifying the oceans. So we're having rapid physical change in our environment. And all of this is pushing energy into the atmosphere and into the oceans. And you're seeing the consequences of that. So we're getting, not just heat waves and hotter days and droughts. We're also getting dramatic rainfall events like happened in Spain recently, or the floods that we saw in Pakistan and Bangladesh. So we're seeing more and more extreme weather events, and they're happening with greater intensity as well as greater frequency. And this is going to force change. It's like, I know it's difficult to communicate these messages. People tend to switch off when they hear this ongoing negative messaging around the climate. But it's like an unstoppable force. It's slow and it's grinding. And the emissions we've put in the atmosphere are going to continue to persist there and drive this change over centuries. So we won't, live through the worst part. We'll be long dead. But our children and our children's children and their children are going to live in an almost unlivable, irrevocably changed world. And this is driving change in the economy, and it's driving change in society. So you're seeing capital relocate. There are parts of the world where capital is flooding to that are safer to invest, and there are parts of the world that capital is just abandoning. You're seeing the way insurance is shifting. So there are large parts of the world where insurers have just withdrawn. They're unable to price the risk, and they no longer insure in those places. So, I'm afraid that's the bad news. But I've come here with a good news story. And what I want to tell you about gives me a great amount of hope. And that is the way the economy is now adjusting to these drivers. So we're seeing an energy revolution unfold in front of our eyes. We're in the middle of a dramatic energy revolution. Clean power, solar, wind, accompanied by grid services, battery storage, pump storage, hydropower, controversially nuclear power. I won't get into the nuclear debate, but clean power solutions are now more cost effective than fossil fuel solutions. You're seeing solar PV prices drop dramatically. In fact, solar, wind, and batteries, they've fallen in the order of 80 to 90%, their prices over the last decade. And the driver behind those price drops is something called Wright's Law. And you may not have heard of Wright's Law, but Wright's Law is going to save us. Because every doubling of deployment capacity, of productive capacity in a technology, leads to a steady reduction in its price. So Wright's Law is what's driving solar, wind, storage, and grid service pricing. And if you look at the aggregate investment now, last year we spent as a world $2.2 trillion on clean energy and grids. And what did we spend in fossil fuels? Half that, 1.1 trillion. And that transition has happened very, very quickly. 10 years ago, the balance was tilted the other way. You're seeing countries like China embrace this transition wholeheartedly. They've got the bulk of the productive capacity in the world. They are deploying clean energy at an incredibly fast rate. So the amount of clean energy in their electricity grid is now 35%. India has just passed the 50% mark. You're seeing countries in Africa. I mean, Ethiopia has just built this vast dam called the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. A little bit controversially, the Egyptians aren't mad about the dam. But it has meant that they now have 100% renewable energy driving their economy. The Kenyans have got tapped into geothermal power. So 47% of the Kenyan electricity grid is powered by geothermal energy, the rest by renewables. So they're like 97, 98% clean energy. So African countries are dramatically leading, they're embracing the transition, they understand where it's going, and they're taking decisions to embrace it. You're seeing similar change happening in electric vehicles. So, last year, 1 in 5 vehicles sold was an electric vehicle. That compares, look back 5-7 years, 2018, it was 2%. The bulk of that, last year there were 17 million electric vehicles sold. The bulk of them in China. I mean, China's market has embraced EVs. And you're seeing that across the whole transport sector. So we're electrifying transport and we're decarbonizing the electricity grids. And it's empowering this change. And, another example from Africa, last year, Ethiopia banned the import of internal combustion engines. Why did they do that? First of all, their electricity grid, they've now got excess power from the dam, and their grid is 100% renewables. Also, they have to import all their fuel at great cost, so it causes balance of payments issues. So it makes complete economic sense for the Ethiopians. They're moving, they're going to be 100% electric vehicles within the space of 5 years. So what you're seeing in Africa, the so-called basket case of the world, is some countries understand the change, the direction of travel, they're embracing it wholeheartedly, and they're leaning in and making it happen at scale. So that's the good news. And quite frankly, the challenge that faces countries is not whether this transition is going to happen or whether it's not going to happen. It's happening. The choice we have is whether we lean in and we embrace this transition and we take the decisions that accelerate it and position us correctly, or whether we pretend it's not happening and we resist change and we face a disorderly and very disruptive transition. That's the choice. Structured, carefully planned, embracing of a transition, resistance and disorder. And this sounds like a simple, rational choice. It's got profound implications for people, because what's happening is that there's a huge reconfiguration taking place in the global jobs market and in the skills that are needed for where we're going to be in the next 10, 20 years. So in aggregate, this transition, the climate transition, the energy transition, is going to create more jobs than we're going to lose. But those jobs are going to take place in different places, different parts of the world, and different places in country. they're going to require different skill sets, and they're going to happen at different times. And the critical thing for countries, if they're wanting to plan these transitions and think about it, is to systematically pose a set of questions. Which are the sectors that we want to grow and enable and push jobs into? You know, you can't have a lackadaisical industrial development strategy like we're pursuing in South Africa. What are the skills that the workers in the 2030s and the 2040s are going to need? And how do we tee up our basic education, higher education, skills development systems to enable that workforce to participate actively in the economy? And given the amount of churn, relocation, disruption that we're going to see in the labor markets, how do we invest proactively in social protection, social security, building community resilience, investing and opening up new economic sectors? So that's the message I wanted to convey to you today. We're in a period of rapid technological change. The global economy and our economy is being reconfigured in a way that is of the scale of the Industrial Revolution, the information age, the big revolutions of our time. And you need to think about where you want to position yourself and how you want to address the needs of your people, our people, in the process of fundamental change. So, you know, my message is you can deny and resist, but it has devastating long-term consequences for your population. You can embrace change, proactively lean into it, actively create new economic sectors, and invest in people so that they're able to navigate this transition. Thank you for listening to me today. Great to talk to you. I look forward to the rest of the discussions.